we do have the Battlefront book that we're going to talk about, and we also have questions we want to get to, so don't forget to submit any questions you guys have, whether through Twitch or YouTube, either one, and we'll try to get to some of those, hopefully towards the end of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's get into Battlefront Twilight Company.
Let's do it. So, Aaron, this book is a tie-in to a game that's a tie-in to movies.
Sure, yeah.
When I saw that initially, I was kind of like, I don't know. It's tie-in stuff. I mean, I know it's Star Wars and it's franchising, and when you're trying to like create these categories, it's ultimately like, dude, you're just buying merch for a thing you like, so shut up.
Sure.
You know, like I get that.
Yeah.
But I think it put me into a position where I'm like almost a little skeptical about going into the book.
Okay.
And that skepticism was not rewarded because I ended up really enjoying it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It took me a little bit to get into. I will say that. It took me a little bit to get into, and it demanded my focus. There were times where I can't do anything else but listen to what's happening, you know, because it's our pace goes sometimes.
No, I understand what you mean. And you also jump from, at least listening-wise, like chapters for this would be real small and then real big, with like a lot happening in this one. I started it. I think this book I really liked, and I kind of didn't like because I think I had such trouble focusing on all the different aspects of what was going on. I really enjoyed in the first 2 chapters I listened to. I'm like, this is cool. This is like a Band of Brothers type of like Star Wars book, and I was like, I think that'd be really cool. I think it was close to that, but I think it might have went more grand than I was anticipating.
Sure.
With like different time jumps,
I get what you mean.
Different locations, different battles.
Yeah.
I think it would have been kind of cool to really kind of focus on like
the trenches.
a small group and really get to kind of know. I don't feel like I really knew all the characters in this book. There was like Namir is a big one that you really start to understand. But then there's like so many other members of Twilight Company, whether it's like Roach or Twitch or Brand or and I feel like I kind of get little glimpses into them.
I get what you mean.
But I feel like in Band of Brothers, and this may be because we'd watched this more recently, I had a better feel of a lot more characters in that, I think, whereas this was much more Namir focused. And I think it would have been kind of cool to kind of jump between different ones and get to know, like, Gadrin. He was a really cool character, and I wanted to know him more, I feel like. But
no, it almost gives you the feeling, even less so, because this came out before Rogue One, where, like, hey, all these characters are interesting, and they're gone. You know, you kind of have that feeling.
Sure.
But I suppose, is that appropriate for specifically a Battlefront book?
Sure.
Right? Because the one thing to point out with this book, like, this isn't a Battlefront 2 book. This is Battlefront 1. And we should say the new Battlefronts, right? I know there's a Battlefront 1 and a Battlefront 2 twice, but the first Battlefront didn't have a story mode.
It was just a multiplayer
It was just a multiplayer. It had Solace, but nothing like story-wise happened. I kind of felt like this was trying to give a story mode to a game that doesn't have one. Does that make sense?
Sure. Because in the second one, you have, like, even if it was only, I think, 4 hours, 5 hours, it wasn't very long, but there was a story element in there. But in the first one, you didn't have any of that.
Yeah. You know, it kind of works, you know, at some point we get, like, points of view of stormtroopers, so we get, like, the other side. But generally, when we look at the Empire, we're looking at, like, the people in charge, Vaders, Vidian, those kind of characters. But here we got stormtroopers, which I'm like, okay, that makes sense thematically for a Battlefront book.
Yeah.
So maybe me being so worried about it being a tie-in kind of set me up to be like, oh, this is a cool character. I should not think he's going to last very long, because when I play Battlefront, the guy on my left dies every 2 minutes. You know?
Sometimes you're dying every 2 minutes,
exactly.
Right?
Sometimes you're dying every 2 minutes.
The one thing I have to say about the stormtrooper aspect, though, is that I don't feel like we really got that very well. Like,
not enough.
I don't really feel like the Thera or Vera was like kind of like the main stormtrooper that we kind of followed, and I felt like it kind of like she has an aspect about her that's really, I'm part of this empire. I look forward to the stormtroopers. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna do one duty and then come back and help my uncle or father, whoever ran the bar.
Yeah.
But there was, I don't know, I didn't feel like we really got a good. It would have been interesting maybe if we had a mirror of Namir and Twilight Company with, like, here's one of the squadrons of troopers.
Yeah.
But I feel like we just kind of got her, and every once in a while we'd cut over to the Prelate. whatever.
Yeah.
Vess, some with a V, I feel like.
Yeah, I know I wrote it down in my notes at some point, but I don't know exactly where.
I mean, I didn't necessarily care about that guy.
Prelate Verge.
Verge, yeah.
He's in that small circle of Palpatine supporters.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, he was, like, kind of crazy with that, right? They say he has a Naboo place, and he, like, has rituals of trying to scar himself and stuff like that. But
Which,
like,
I mean, we have people, Captain Phasma from the sequel trilogy. Like, it still kind of rolls over there because she's obsessed with Palpatine too. She has chromium armor, like from a Naboo ship.
Sure.
You know,
is that why she has it?
I believe
she's
so.
like a fanatic for Palpatine?
I believe so. I mean, that's at the very least like my loose studying into the sequel trilogy for that. But there's a Captain Phasma book that we'll get to eventually.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
I'm actually really interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know about that, but I mean that's cool stuff too. I just felt like the Imperial side of things didn't add as much, and I found myself being like, can we just get back to like what the Rebels are doing? I guess.
Yeah, I felt that way a couple times,
and I don't think it helped either having Thera. Like most of Thera's stuff was, those were the small chapters.
Yeah,
it's like let's dabble in this for a minute, and then let's go back here, and then it's like here's an hour with this chapter of Twilight Company on a mission. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. How do we take out this ATST in the jungle? And we gotta hit this distillery, and then we gotta go to Hoth, and be on Hoth during the attack, and that was a cool moment too.
Yeah.
And then we'd have like some Imperial stuff sometimes, and I'm like, I don't necessarily care about these as much, but I think some of it was trying to just connect and give you a feel of Sullust, because that's where she was mainly based on, right?
Like I said, I feel like Sol is such a cool-looking planet in there, and they're like, we didn't do any story stuff with it or anything. Give it to a book.
Yeah.
Give it to somebody in a book.
For that kind of stuff, it seemed pretty good, but it might have been kind of cool to get, more often than not, I feel like for Imperial stuff, we get, I'm an Imperial, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Oh, man, maybe this isn't the right thing to do. Hey, you know what? I'm going to switch sides and do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's most Imperial things we get, whether it's Battlefront 2,
generally,
where I felt like that was advertised of like, play as an Imperial. I'm like, oh man, what's that gonna be like?
I like what we got, but I wish we got the first part more.
Yeah, and I don't feel like we ever really get to see, and maybe it's because like, oh well, that's you'll be evil and stuff. Yeah. It's like, well, have your protagonists have them believe in what they're doing, but you're playing and this is wrong. But you get to experience what it's like to be on the Empire side more so.
My perfect one is Callus. Like Callus spent enough time as like, screw this guy. He killed all of the Lasats. He killed that one stormtrooper just because he made a joke. That wasn't a battle droid. That was a person.
Yeah.
And then all the stuff happens with Callus, and by the end, you're like, yay!
Yeah.
I love your 70 haircut rebel look.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I kind of wanted a little bit more out of the Imperial side of this one.
I think I agree. Though, I will say there's something I actually wanted more than more Imperial stuff. I don't know if you felt this way, but Star Wars is obviously a very visual language type of property. Like, it's so much of it is spectacle. I've never seen this before when it comes to the way these wars are fought in these here stars, right? I felt like the author, Alexander Freed, who I also learned was the main story lead for the Imperial agent of the Old Republic.
Okay.
So if you ever played the Imperial Agent storyline, you're checking out Alexander Freed's work.
Okay.
I thought that was kind of cool.
I know Drew Carpesian did a lot.
He did it,
but I didn't know about any of the others. So that's really cool.
Yeah, he was way more KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, loosely with KOTOR 2, and I think he might have done some stuff.
He worked on
including
KOTOR,
the Revan book.
I don't know exactly what he did on it.
So I thought that was kind of cool. But personally, and this might be a thing that stems from this being a video game that has a book supplement, in that I feel like we would have this great build-up to a battle. It would be tense, and I'm worried about the characters, and they're like ready to fight, and the battle would happen, he'd be like, and they battled for 3 days, and that was it. And then ATSTs chased us, and that's it. I felt like we would crescendo up to like, all right, and now here starts the coolest scene in this book, and then it would kind of end quickly.
Sure.
Did you get that feeling at all?
No, I get what you mean. There's a few battle points that I think feel like that a lot. I
only say that because it feels like build up and then go play the game.
And I think part of what that is that
Yeah.
through a lot of those we follow Namir.
Yes.
Which is why like in the Band of Brothers idea that I had, I think it would have been cool to like, okay, here we go, we're here, and you hear Namir's perspective, and it might even be more Game of Thrones-ish, right? Where they jump from character to character.
Yes.
It'd be neat to see here's Namir, and then you end where he's at with whatever, and then you jump over to Brand, or you get to see Roach, or and you get to. I think it would make the battles seem a little bit more grand, but you're seeing different perspectives of those.
Gotcha.
There's some elements of things that I really like that he did with a few battle things or elements in the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely, I even think like in the last fight, like because we're only really seeing Namir's perspective.
Yeah.
Like this, it was I feel like it was a day or two fight or something, right? Like there was at least a day where like I remember like he's like it's morning now and we won. And I'm like,
sure.
I feel like we missed a lot of this fight, but
you're right. I feel like the last couple books that we've done some more like youth books and stuff. So this was a very long book in terms of like what we've been doing a little bit the last couple Badonkagonks. So it took me a bit to get through. But I also had the feeling of wanting more in a bad way. And those two things I feel like sometimes I'm like, ooh, not good.
Sure, I get what you mean.
So that's like my biggest negative is that I should never have a feeling with a book this long that's like, you didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
I wanted you to go further. But again, I'm also trying to remember that this is a supplement to a game that is all you do.
Sure.
So I kind of get it, maybe. I can be forgiving a little bit. Forgiving. Like I'm the person who, I shall forgive you.
I will forgive you.
I just mean book. Like I can understand it a little bit more, that decision.
Yeah.
As an author or a storyteller.
No. As far as the book and like some of the story aspects and stuff, like Namir, I thought was a very interesting character. I liked a lot of the story bits they had with him.
I love the moral and like he's not your Luke Skywalker, your Obi-Wan Kenobi, that your Princess Leia that has principles and like that's why I'm fighting.
Sure.
Where you kind of get that more archetype fairy tale feeling of a character.
Yeah.
This was a entrenched soldier.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that point of view,
yeah.
especially for a Battlefront tie-in.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, you get a good sense of his personality whenever I don't remember who it was or if they had names even, but there was some people being rowdy at a place. I think when they were trying to recruit,
I think
or
so.
something like that, or just after recruiting
during the company parties they have.
And he's like, I will put you in the airlock and lock the doors because I don't have bullets to waste for you or air to waste or any of this. You'll just starve to death and it'd be terrible. And he's like, I can't really do this and I wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
But they don't know that.
They don't know that.
But, so I thought that was an interesting thing where it's like he seems really intimidating, but then it's like you get into his internal side and he's like, well, I wouldn't really do this.
Yeah.
And or I don't have the authority to do such a thing.
Yeah.
But I will scare them into listening.
Yeah. No, I definitely felt the character's relation to like Cassian Andor and the way that morality is a privilege for the people that are like on camera all the time.
Yeah. Sure.
Like I'm not on camera all the time. I got to do the dirty work. It kind of reminded me of Andor in a way.
There's a moment there when he's looking at the morality of we haven't really talked about Chalice.
Yes.
The governor that they meet.
Who's one of my favorite characters. Maybe one of my favorite Imperial characters, like top. I really liked it.
They're really full of ego,
which
fits really well for an Imperial. The one thing I really like that they end up doing with the character was that there's so many times throughout where Chalice is talking about like, oh, okay, well we got attacked.
Yeah.
Well, why do you think we got attacked? They're probably trying to stop me. Like can't have someone spreading Imperial information.
Yeah.
And actually during that part they mentioned Sibo from Rebels.
Yeah, they did mention Sibo,
which I thought was a cool little name drop there.
Wow, I didn't make that connection, but I remember the name.
Yeah,
this was
great. So this was yesterday when I was driving. This when I was telling you about like I need to write down a note, and I was like,
Sibo was that one?
Yeah, that was Sibo.
Great.
I was like, I gotta write this down so I don't forget Sibo was here.
That's cool. My favorite part of before we move too far, Chalice, when the Battle of Hoth scene is happening, it's just so funny that we as readers know that's why we know why Vader's actually there. And he says it in the book. But I just love that this character is insisting, no, this is about me. This is about my book. This is about this.
Yeah.
I'm the spotlight.
Yeah.
And Vader kind of like,
Where's Skywalker?
Yeah.
No, that's what I think
is
so
one of
funny.
my favorite parts. I just love that the ego of the character was trying to supersede what we know about Star Wars.
Yeah. Like, I thought was funny about her was just the ego that she was so important that they were sending Imperials for her, that Darth Vader's here himself to come and stop her and get her.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it feels like an Imperial. So like when we get to the end of the book and like she does what she does, I'm like, I'm not really surprised at it at all. Like that kind of just fits with her.
I loved it. I was so happy that we didn't have her do a face turn. We kept her heel.
Yeah.
You know? It took balls.
Yeah.
Because, again, how many Imperial stories do you have where they come around?
Yeah. Not
Keep it bad.
And yeah, Nexus, that was another one of the things I was going to mention too, was about her talking about Count Vidian, which was the villain from A New Dawn that we had in that was like I'm trying to remember what it was. If it was like a mentor or someone she just worked with, but
it was her mentor.
There was the mention in talking about him and stuff too, and how they.
That was a fun.
Like, okay.
That was a fun new moment to be like, oh, Vidian, and that's like my first time I've experienced that post Badonkagonk.
Sure.
Kind of. I mean, we had Rail in a couple books now, with Dooku or whatever, but. Personally, for me, I was just like, ooh, Vidian, and I was just kind of happy because one, A New Dawn Vidian, I wasn't like super impressed, but I also kind of like what they were doing. But I like now, I'm like, I don't know, maybe just time
just
between.
Shows up
I was just like, Vidian.
Look, there he is.
I'm glad that I'm able to appreciate it. Not
How
just,
cyborgy is he now?
Yeah, not just looking down at literature from the canon, but being among it now. It's really cool. So I really only had that in High Republic. It feels like.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, because those are going to continue with a lot of those characters, and this you don't know what you're going to get.
Though, to be fair, in terms of like greater canon looking down, Vader, Nien Nunb.
Yeah, he's
and Han Solo.
Han Solo, yeah.
On Hoth. Like I like that they don't just come out and say it, but this guy working on a freighter, drinking Corellian whiskey.
No, I mean, I do wish we had a little bit more of. Maybe more of people that I kind of knew to connect into some of these characters a little bit, but it felt very like these guys are kind of on their own.
I get what you mean,
which might be good too, because like this really gives you a glimpse of like the rebels are at a war, and there was a line they had that I really liked that I think Hal said, Captain Ivan, which was like, if the rebellion wins, it wins completely. Like there is no like, well, we kind of win, or they surrender. It's just the rebellion either overthrows the Empire or they don't.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's right. And usually what we see is like the bigger battles and the people who are like important. We don't usually see the smaller little battles happening, around. Honestly, maybe Andor is like Cassian is one of the closest to like having like smaller little rebel things and like in the show, like kind of starting to pop up and do things in different places. Like usually we kind of see more of like, here's Luke and Leia's a princess of Alderaan, so she's really involved in a lot of this stuff. And then you have like, here's where Mon Mothma is, and there's like the higher named people and like what missions they're
Rebel High
out.
Command.
Yeah. And this felt like, well, like these guys listen to them, but for a lot of this book, they're kind of just on their own.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like those moments too. I like that in a fairy tale setting that Star Wars is, and you will clearly have the good guys, the bad guys, and the good guys should win. But that doesn't change the fact that you never beat fascism. You just do it for now. It will always come back. The dark side will always come back. You're never done dealing with the dark side.
Sure.
You might balance it, and things are good for now. But that imbalance will come. It will happen, and you're always going to have people pushing on the dark side, and you're always going to need to push on the light side every day for the rest of your life. And then when you die, someone else will take over.
Yep.
And it never ends. And that's true to life. It's not necessarily the fairy tale ending.
Sure,
but it's true to life, and it's stories like this that make it like, oh no, that pops back up.
The old guys in the bar on, I think it's on Celis, talking about the Clone Wars happened, and I didn't tell my kids about the Clone Wars and stuff. It's like, well, you couldn't. They'd have nightmares, Like, there's that kind of thing. But then there's, like, the other old guys, like, the Empire is built on the souls of our grandchildren,
now Like, yeah, exactly. Like, you're not preparing your kids for what they need to
It's like, what did we fight for, and then where are they now? And it's like, it's
every generation has its battle, and that battle will continue forever.
Yeah.
That's the struggle. That's why we tell good stories.
Yeah. Another thing that I liked about Namir that I thought was an interesting connection that he had early on in the book was his relationship with Hal, Captain Ivan, right? They called him Hal as well for howling, mad howling Ivan or something like that. The relationship he had with him was kind of interesting, and he looks at him as like, well, he's my commander, but he's not gonna. I don't doubt that he would sacrifice me if it meant a win for the rebellion, right? And I thought that was like, man, that's kind of a scary thought to have, and be like, we're just pawns in like an overarching game. But later on, whenever they're actually fighting on Sullust, there's a moment where they're fighting and they're trying to hold back, and then all the stormtroopers kind of stop, and then they split, and then an ATST like squadron comes in and starts like attacking, and he's like, that's gonna tear us up. And he's like, open fire on the ATST. He's like, sir, our people are there. And it's like, well, for the greater good of us trying to win this, we have to. Yeah. And it really reflected, I thought, the moment of him thinking about Namir, or Namir thinking about Hal, being like, he would sacrifice me if it meant a win. Yeah. And then he has to kind of make that same decision of like, in this war, sometimes you have to sacrifice some people for us to be able to win, because they're just going to keep coming, and we have to stop these ATSTs. And I don't know, I just thought it was interesting seeing Hal or Namir have to kind of like fill into that captain role and start trying to do what Hal was doing and stuff too, and kind of face the same thoughts he had about his own like commander.
Yeah, in his absence of idealism, like he kind of starts getting ideals, like the commander himself, right? Like the way that kind of comes around, but it's almost it's very similar to what Poe Dameron goes through in The Last Jedi, right? In that, well, what are the reasons that people are upset with you? Why is it not the heroic thing to go out there and give your life needlessly? It's like, no, if you're gonna give your life, it's got to be worth something. You got to think it through. You can't just do this quickly. You need to fight for what you love, not what you hate.
Sure.
You know,
fight to protect what you love. Yeah. It's the when you have the Holdo maneuver. Yeah. Like that is being done for a reason of trying to stop this ship or buy time for them so that they can get away.
And per the lore, with having all three movies out now, we know how the Holdo maneuver is extremely, extremely rare to pull off. So when she goes and turns that ship, she doesn't think it's going to work. Just that this is literally all I can do. Sure. But I will do it because it needs to be done in this moment.
Well, it's trying to protect all of them. Versus like Poe could have just gone out and died at any point. It's like, I died fighting the Empire, but did it accomplish anything in the same thing? So like,
and then in the fairy tale, in that ideal, the maneuver can work.
Yeah,
you know.
And in here, when they're fighting the ATSTs, like they destroy the ATSTs. So like the lives, and there's a point where he's like, I don't want to think about the soldiers I'm seeing on the ground and if they were from the ATST or if they were from my decision. But
division.
Yeah, it's just one of those moments. And I thought like it's one of those, it's a deeper war thing that sometimes Star Wars doesn't necessarily have, which is why like when I first started, I'm like, oh, Band of Brothers.
Agreed.
Interesting. Because that gets very dark and dirty and gritty, and you know, you
fight so hard, and you have to wonder if you won when you come home.
Yeah. But then you also see Namir whenever when the it's not called Twilight, is it? Their ship?
Yeah, it's the Twilight.
Is it called Twilight? For some reason I thought that was wrong. Like, no, the Twilight Company.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Twilight is the name of Anakin's ship he gets in Clone Wars movie.
Yeah.
The name of the ship is the Thunderstrike.
Thunderstrike, yeah.
It's a CR-90, like the Tantive 4.
The Corvettes.
Which, this is going to be real dumb. And remember your thought.
Okay.
I was confused because a CR-90 does not have a docking bay. It has docking rings. So did they have a docking bay? They were docking ships in.
It's modulated. It's added on aftermarket.
You know what's really funny?
What?
Corellian ships actually are very modular, so that is the correct answer. You're right. I actually came with that knowing the answer.
Oh, okay.
Well, because, I mean...
It's an aftermarket edition, you know?
The CR-90s that I'm familiar with do not have one, but it is a thing where Corellian infrastructure you can start moving things around, so it's possible they had one, and shut up, nerd, you know?
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, with that, talking about their docking bays or their airlocks and all that, there's the point when they're attacked, and he finds Chalice and another soldier, and I forget, like, I think he mainly just sees Chalice, but then he sees that there's a soldier in there who's, like, unconscious, and he opens up the door, and, like, his concern is for this other soldier. Chalice brings up an idea of like, let's open it up, let the fire out, because there's fire in the ship at the time. Yeah. Let the fire out. We'll hold on. We'll close it up. We'll be fine. And he's like, but this soldier is unconscious and won't be able to hold on and will die. So he risks hoping that things will calm down and that they will get air if he locks them inside this place away from the fire.
Yep.
And Chalice is mad about it, being like, I was better off without you. I had more air for me. Now I'm sharing it with 2 people.
Yeah.
But I like seeing his concern for other soldiers in those kind of moments.
Yeah.
And also like when he learns about Roach having a spice addiction, and like there's some different understandings he has with other soldiers that I thought was good to have. Like here's the he sometimes has to do bad stuff, but he also is caring for the people on his side, right?
Yeah, it was fun to read him going through that, like learning what he means to others, because the whole never leave a man behind. That's from the first Domino episode where they're training at the Citadel thing, right? And the ARC trooper comes in and he's like, "You guys lost because you're literally leaving people behind. You only work as a team, as a unit, and you got to find your place in it and then execute." So him learning what he's good at in relation to others was a fun read. Yeah.
And then I think out of the other soldiers and stuff too, I think my favorite 2 were either Squadron, which I think just because he was a basilisk and like a big Pong Krell kind of looking dude.
He just spoke really fun.
Yeah.
Like this turn of phrase was really funny.
Well, yeah, and there was just interactions that they had together I really enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also Brand I liked, which
too.
was like the sniper that they had.
Yep.
But she had an interesting backstory of how she got into the team, which I thought was cool, having been a bounty hunter previously.
Yeah, again, showing that kind of like, this level of rebellion, we don't have the privilege of being like farm boys and princesses. We're the bad people. We're the spies, the saboteurs, the assassins that Cassian talks about. And it's like, we cannot let our bad deeds go to waste.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool too. I like that. The bounty hunter.
Yeah, which I think that's cool. Like, we've seen a lot of different bounty hunters, but to have one here where it's like I took a mission. Empire was hiring tons of bounty hunters at the time and stuff too, during the transition, and I believe that kind of stuff happened where we need people to do some dirty work.
Sure,
bounty hunters will do that.
Yeah,
but I think she was after Captain Hal, and he offered a job, and she had already kind of, because of what she was doing, kind of started to get to know the team and the crew and stuff, and was like, all right. And I was like, okay, well, that's I like that more of a twist on someone's background and backstory.
Yeah.
It made me think kind of like when making like a D&D character or something along those lines, like where'd this character come from? Who are they? Have they been a soldier all the time? Did they used to be like a scoundrel or something, Did they do some shady stuff in the past and they want to make up for it?
Yeah.
Or is it like in Andor or Rogue One, where like you're talking about, like you have those people that's like, well, we've always done dirty stuff. I'd rather do dirty stuff for something good.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Make it count. And
yeah.
I think that's kind of.
Here are the things you have to do. We don't have the privilege if they're good or bad sometimes, but at the end of the day, you want to think that what you've done overall is the good part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can be like, I don't want to kill anybody or anything, but when you get to like, well, how do we stop the Empire? It's like, well, we got to stop the Emperor.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do that? He's very powerful and could be immortal if he has cloning or whatever else is going on.
Yeah.
He's lived a long time. How do you might have to kill him?
Absolutely. I've exhausted most of my notes. I didn't think we weren't going to at this point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed the book, but there were a couple of times where I'm like, dang it, I want to see more. But I also was like, dang it, I need to get through this. It's so long.
No, I get you there. I have a couple other things. I thought the mission for the distillery was an interesting one. That's when they had an ATST guerrilla warfare takedown.
Yeah.
Which was fine, but it was also, I felt like they kind of showed like, oh, it was a struggle, and then it was like, all right, and then we put them in the mud and we're good. And I was like, okay.
Yep.
I thought it might be a little bit more than that.
Agreed.
But I don't feel like it's very often that we have like, I'm trying to remember all the times of having biological weapons used in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I remember Clone Wars had on Naboo the
blue shadow virus.
The shadow virus, yeah. And I remember that, but I'm like, that's the only other one I could think of. So I thought it was interesting to have like, here's, all the things the Empire is doing. That seems like one of the things they would probably do.
We've seen weapons that affect organics that don't affect mechanical beings.
In Clone Wars,
I don't know
they
if
had
you
one
call
with
that.
the,
I mean, technically, that would be a chemical process.
I
suppose.
So, yeah.
But yeah, you would figure at the very least in the Clone Wars, you'd have had a lot more of that can specifically target clones.
Yeah, especially
yeah.
Which I remember something about working on like a clone type of virus, and they were afraid that would happen and just kill the whole army.
Yeah.
But I don't remember ever coming to fruition or anything.
Do clone trooper helmets filter out toxins?
I
remember
think they do to an extent, right?
In episode 7, Finn talks about how First Order stormtrooper helmets, they don't filter out toxins, just smoke. Like, he talks about that when they're planning on poisoning the Millennium Falcon when Han and Chewie take over.
Okay.
So, at the very least,
those
don't.
Huh.
I'm just curious.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember, because whenever we are in the shadow virus, we have people inside things, but we also had clones there, just in their outfits. But I think they were getting sick too, weren't they?
I think so. See, like the rebreathers that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan use, like, they can't use that to filter out the deoxys gas in the beginning of the movie.
No.
They have to hold their breath.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
But so, I assume those things, what they do is they, like, take the oxygen out of the water and allow you to breathe, or they somehow rebreathe and they use the air you're sending out somehow to turn to oxygen. But if you breathe it out your nose, then that doesn't help. So
sure.
My assumption is the water and taking the oxygen out of the H2O.
Yeah. And then as I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. But the Empire gassed the Geonosians. We do remember that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That did happen.
Yeah.
I wonder if this was a similar thing that they used, too. Because they use this later on in the battle, right? Or later on in the book where Namir, I remember being upset. And that was kind of one of the turning points for, I think, his turn against Chalice, too, right? Was we did this. Yeah. And this still came back. And there's a lot of... I love the relationship between Namir and Chalice. I thought was interesting. And just like, she wasn't really above him, but also... she kind of was in different ways, and he would listen, but also didn't want to listen, and then eventually overthrew. But then when he did overthrow it all, he was like, "She was right."
Yeah,
it was a very interesting relationship, and I those are probably my favorite two characters in the book, which I mean we get the most time with too.
I would love a comic pack with them.
Sure, yeah,
for action figures to buy.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if any of these characters show up anywhere else because
so.
Like you were saying too, like this does feel like let's make a story for Battlefront, but we're not going to put it in it.
Yeah, this is effectively the NPCs that you play here as them.
Yeah.
Twilight Company, of course, being like the hardest of the hard, like they're the vanguard, the 61st Mobile Infantry, right? They go in when the fighting's hard, and they also cover you when you're
retreating. Yeah.
So like they're the guys that would be on the front lines in these Battlefront games. So we're giving character and story to what ultimately is not much when it comes to the game, but a lot when it comes to the book.
And then I feel like I had one more thing at least. Where was it? Oh, there was a conversation I thought that was interesting that I wanted to bring up too. That I think was Hal as well.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember the exact conversation. I just have these notes here about it was like we're alchemists. Was the conversation he had.
Yeah.
And one of the words he had was the substance of oppression becomes the substance of freedom. But like, I just thought it was interesting because I was trying to think of like, what does that mean? Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, the things that are oppressing us and keeping us down are the same things that will then turn us into wanting to fight for the freedom is the way I started taking it.
I mean, fascism doesn't keep rearing its head because it's an unattractive idea. Right? It's like, well, man, it'd be great. I mean, Anakin, like, it'd be great if everybody did the same thing.
If everyone just did what
they all disagree. It's like, well, they shouldn't. Well, how do we make it?
I would make them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an attractive thing that, if done at its fullest extent, maybe, sure, you might have a society that can advance certain ways, but it's not going to advance in art, in expression, and ultimately won't progress, which is why you will have a rebellion. Yeah. That inevitably will coalesce into a peaceful government. That inevitably will slide back into fascism. That inevitably, And
then you repeat it and go back through it again.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how long it takes, I suppose.
Yep. And it's scary when you're on the backside of it. And you're like, how far until... Oh, no.
When's the next one?
Yeah. You just look at the human history. You go back and back and back. And it's like, oh, well I don't want to be... want to be around during that event.
Yeah.
Yeah. but you never know when that event's going to start. Anyway, I like to escape into Star Wars to forget about this.
Yeah, I think that's most of it. The one thing I didn't get to say, or I forgot to say earlier when we were talking about the ego Chalice had.
Yeah.
Chalice. The ship's probably trying to get me, and the Darth Vader's after me kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It's like, oh, it's probably trying to get me, trying to stop me. That's why they attacked it. And it was like, it turned out to be a chance run-in with just some kind of scouting or just some random Imperial ship out there. And I just thought it was so funny the ego that they had about how important they were when not even the person who was holding them captive even thought about them, right? Like that was her whole thing in the beginning, right? He doesn't even know he has a prisoner. Yeah. And it's like, it's me, and I just shoot him because ha-ha. And I'm like, they didn't even care about you. And they had you there? Like, I don't know.
It's an interesting point. Like, we need to in our lives, don't be a chalice. Don't assume that every attack is pointed at you.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be targeted at you. It can just be like a coincidence or whatever. But I did like that the end, and part of it's, I think, too, just Chalice trying to figure out, like, what is my play? I'm not with Twilight anymore, and I don't know what I want to do, so I'll take every, what's the word? Every bomb for electronics. I'm playing every ion bomb that we have, and I'm going to fly it up there and cause problems to this ship. Yep. And it even, like, I feel like every Imperial, maybe not Chalice, but they had some doubts in everything they were doing except for the Prelate. Verge. But the what was the guy that was there with them? I forget his name right now, but he that was there with the Prelate eventually kind of just went with what Chalice was doing and ended up shooting the Prelate to stop it. And it's just one of those things where it's like, even most of the Imperials seem to be on the side of, like, maybe what's going on isn't what I agree with. And I don't know. I like that because I want to think good wins out, but sometimes I also just want to see Imperials be bad.
Sometimes when you hear the expression, "Oh, that person's such a great leader, their men will follow them into hell." Sometimes it's meant as a compliment, and other times it's meant as like, "Oh, those sheep."
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, I guess so.
They followed that confident person who should not have been that confident into hell.
They're like lemmings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. I didn't think about it that way too. But, like, that guy was looked up at as, like, a leader for his men and everything. And, he just eventually he turns on an Imperial, but then he covers it up and then just stays with the Empire. He doesn't really make any major changes.
Hey, you know what? Small deeds, good small deeds, I'll take them. Darth Vader did one good small deed in his last 20 years of life, you know?
Yeah.
But it was a big one.
Yeah, sure.
Did it make up for everything? No. But it did change the galaxy.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But no, I think those are most of my my notes that I had over the book. I think overall I enjoyed it. I was enjoying a lot more my second time through, trying to after having kind of a little bit better grasp on all the characters.
You find that pretty consistent your second time through?
I think so. Yeah.
That's unfair for you to have to read a book twice though to appreciate it, but I understand.
Yeah, well, and I think lots of times too is like I think I really start to get more of the characters and understand a lot more of them.
Yeah.
Like once I get partway through the book.
Yeah.
And then I feel like towards the end, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, this, and now I see where it ends. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I go back and I start at the beginning again.
I get you.
And then I'm like, okay, now I know who you are and what kind of happens with you, and I have a better idea of this. I'm like, oh, and then that's when I pick up things where it's like, Namir thought Hal would sacrifice himself, but then he shot his own people to take out the ATSTs, you know, like, like I can pick up those because like I forgot that before, you know.
I get you.
I didn't pick that up the first time.
You know, oftentimes we're asked a lot like, how do you guys just like stuff all the time? And one of my answers generally is like, I'm just in a good mood when I'm watching it. But when you're reading a book for 18 hours, like you go through a lot of moods.
Sure.
Like I can be in the same mood for an episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
In which, you know, I'm not thinking about, especially the way we do it, because I'm not sitting there thinking like, there's something I should be doing while I'm reading this book or watching this movie. There's something I should be doing this job or this chore. But luckily, we get to do this as our job, so I'm never feeling like I'm wasting my time. I'm always in the mood of like, yes, story. Let's do a story today.
Sure.
Cool. And for me, at least, it can be inconsistent when I'm reading a book because I'm not always in the same mood and I'm doing it in my free time.
Sure.
Where I should be doing other things.
Sometimes like I'm just tired and driving home, just listening to something like make sure I get some of this book in today.
You get I get my dad's voice in the back of my head, like Eric, you talk about Star Wars enough in your free time. Work.
Yeah, Tabor. That sounds right. Thank you, Nexus. That was the Imperial captain with the prelate.
Yeah.
But no, I get you. Like, and that sometimes may be part of it too, of like going through and trying to get through part of the books at different times and being like, all right, well, I'm already tired tonight, but I want to make sure I get through some of this tonight and stuff too. But no, I think if I could get through every book we did, if I could get through twice before, I think I'd have a better grasp and I might like them more.
Sure.
Because I feel like the second time I'm always a little bit more like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. And that's when I picked up like the SIBO. I'm like, oh man, I missed SIBO last time when I went through this. Okay, that's cool.
I didn't get him. Damn.
So, but no, she was referencing. It was kind of cool because she was talking about how important she was, and it's like can't let Imperial secrets out. Can't have another SIBO incident.
Yeah.
And I'm like SIBO incident. I was like the guy that knew about Ezra's parents and stuff. Like, okay, that's
that
cool.
Works. So this is like what, a year and a half or so after the Death Star.
Yeah.
SIBO's
I mean, it's after A New
5
Hope,
years, so
right? So it's been a little bit of time. That's because I kept confusing when we were sometimes in this too.
Sure.
Trying to remember it, but then I do love it whenever they do like, oh man, Commander Skywalker can't blow up a Death Star every month.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Damn, I wish I could.
I love that. It's good stuff.
So there's a lot of things like that, and they mentioned some different things. They have a name drops for I think Masamita and Leia.
Yeah.
I thought it was one of the interesting recruitment moments was. Honestly, I think it was when they were talking to Roach. It was like, is that your name? It's like, that's what I like to go by. It's like, all right. And they're like, at least it's not another Leia.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't think about like people coming to join the rebellion and then maybe just making up a name to join the rebellion. And I was like, that might be also safe for like their family and stuff too.
True, but it's hard to find Imperial spies.
Sure. But so many people are picking Leia as their name because I want to be like the hero of the rebellion.
That's really cool.
They had the same thing with some guy named Umu 7 that they talked about, where he's like, he's named after like Chieftain Emperor Umu, but he's the 7th one we got. But it was like
7. Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was in earlier parts, and I was hoping to get through it again because I was like, wait a minute, who is this guy? But I'm like, all right, but just the story of him, and they talked about the creed and stuff with him and whatnot, But there was just the renaming.
That reminds me.
A lot of people seem to rename after like important heroes that they have.
There's a podcast that I listen to, and like they have a bunch of different people come in and out, and not characters, but new panelists and people like in their sphere show up. But they've had so many Franks. They have a Frank 5.
Frank 5?
Yeah.
Dang, that's a lot of Franks.
That's a lot of Franks.
That's like, it sounds like you're talking about hot dogs.
I know. Frank 5.
Frank 5 standing by. All right. Well, I think that's all I really have right now. Then
Twilight
for
Company.
Twilight Company.
Yeah.
Overall, like I think the book was fine. I think there's some other ideas that may have been my own fault. Like as I started to get into it, I'm like, ooh, I think we're gonna go to this. This is like Band of Brothers because I remember listening to the first two chapters and being like, Eric, did you start the book yet? And you're like, oh no. I was like, oh dude, the first 2 have me in it. Like I think it sounds really cool. I'm interested to see what they do with it.
I went home that night and started it.
Yeah,
you said that.
And I'm like, those first 2 chapters I thought were really good, and then from there on, like it kind of fluctuated for me a lot.
Yeah.
And some of that could have been like I didn't have good grasps on all the characters, or like we spent a lot of time with Namir, and I would have liked to have maybe just spent more time with the other characters. I think is kind of what my thoughts are on it. I think I would have rather have removed some of the Imperial stuff and had more like members of the rebellion.
I agree. I think if we weren't going to not fix, but have the battles be a little more robust, then I would probably lose like 50 pages. I would say.
Sure. Yeah, because I always think of like with this one, I think about like when you watch like a war movie, when you watch like Saving Private Ryan, like all those characters are very unique on their squad.
Yeah. And
I felt like there was a lot of unique characters, but I don't feel like I really got to know them as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe I did. Maybe I got to know them as much as like Vin Diesel and Saving Private Ryan, But I don't know. I think I wanted, since it was in a book form, those are the times I really get to get into like Obi-Wan Kenobi's head.
Yeah.
And get to feel like, maybe not feel, but understand how he feels when he uses the Force, as opposed to just like, well, he jumped high.
Yeah.
It's like the exhaustion he's feeling and what he has to do to try to like, now I got to jump. And
that's the strength of the literature format. But the weakness is that, well, you might spend time with some characters that you don't know as well as you do Obi-Wan. So you're not recontextualizing things you know about someone already. You're learning new things, and sometimes it can just feel like a lot.
Sure.
So I get you.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. Eric, if you don't have anything else on that.
That's good. Fun book.
Yeah. It was a fun book. I did enjoy it. It was a little longer than some of our past books, but it was still fun, and I might, depending on, I forget what our next book is.
I'm going to go look it up.
Which we need to look at. But depending on how long the next book is, I might try to finish my listen through of this one. There's been a few books that I've been like, man, I need to re-listen to this one at some point, and I just haven't had a chance to. But our next Badonkagonk, I believe, will be April 25th.
Next is we've had a lot of messages. I can't find what the next book is.
And I believe I remember it being a... I can say the character's name, right, of what I believe the next book was?
I mean, unless you're wrong, in which case...
I'm pretty sure it was a Leia book.
Yeah. And I can't see the chat, I'm sorry.
But the Leia book...
Here we go. Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. Same author of Into the Dark and Master and Apprentice.
It's definitely a Leia book. Yeah, that's just the title.
Leia, Princess of Alderaan. I'm hyped. I love Leia. I love Padme, and I always say in their respective eras, they don't get enough to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Leia especially, I think. Padme, I guess does, but I think of Clone Wars, where she does a lot more in the Clone Wars than she maybe did in the movies.
She does. But way more than the movies, yeah.
Though in the first movie, she's a really important part of that and does a lot, but we don't really know who she is yet.
Yeah, we cut out the entire rebellion subplot in episode 3.
Yeah.
9 scenes.
Yeah.
She just gets sad and dies, mostly in that movie.
Yeah, she doesn't. In episode 3, she's not very prominent at all. She's much more, important and around in episode 1, but at that point, too, when you're watching that, she's a handmaiden that's just there, and Qui-Gon's like, good thing the Queen's not here.
Yeah.
Too bad. Why am I going to listen to you?